All right, so what am I going to talk to you about today? So I usually specialize in ADCx on the Pro Tools team. Everyone on the Pro Tools team who develops there kind of works in a lot of different areas. So I'm actually going to give you a high-level overview of a few different APIs that Avid makes available. And the general gist of this talk is to help you feel like these aren't really mysterious ways to connect your products with Avid, but really to like reduce the barrier to entry. Because I know that interacting with Avid as a big company can be a little different. Almost everything else that people are going to talk to you about today is the entry point is like go to GitHub and git clone. It's not that way with Avid. And so I'm going to help you understand kind of what are the steps to get in. So we're talking about Yukon. We're going to talk about the Pro Tools Scripting SDK, and we're going to talk about ADCx at the end. Hopefully I'll go fast enough that I can really dig in on that, because that's what I'm excited about. Okay, so just to set our frame of reference here, I hope everyone knows what Avid is and what we do in general, but I'm going to invite a guest speaker up. I'm going to invite Shri up from the solutions team at Avid to give more of a picture of why products that people like you make, products that are part of an ecosystem, are important to Avid, and why Avid is important to those products. So Shri, come on up and talk to us about that.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, my name is Srijesh Nair. I'm an audio application specialist for Avid based out of Dubai. So I handle the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, the Central Europe, Turkey. So if you take a look at that on the map, it's a very interesting region as well. So my point is, what I do is I take care of demos. I talk through workshops, and I talk through workflows as well. The important part is, like, if you were to just look at the past 2 releases that Pro Tools had, so you can see we've got integration with not just in terms of plugins, we've also got it in terms of immersive mixing. So I'm sure you would have heard of Dolby Atmos. We've also got it with Sony 360, and there's also Audio Vivid that we have. We've also got another very cool integration with a company called Soundflow, who makes scripts. That's the other part that Rob will talk about, is Pro Tools scripting. And they make excellent tools for macros that you can fire within Pro Tools and, just create stuff out of your way and make life a lot more easier. So this is just Pro Tools 25.10. And what we did in December was also a build-up on this. So you would also see like stuff like Bounce Factory Lite, which is a bounce mechanism from Soundflow, and a lot of other plugins as well. What is also interesting, it's not just about the plugins. There's also something that's called the inner circle rewards that we have from Avid, wherein we push a lot of these plugins to the users who are on a support plan with us, which means they get to experience your plugins and the ones that you make in association with us. As in, like, it's not just important to make plugins, it's also important to see how it gets to the users and how they can benefit from that. Now, in that line, this is how I tend to do this as well, and this is how our team does it as well. We do demos, we do workshops. In fact, apart from being a product specialist, I'm also a film mixing engineer. So a lot of these stuff is also used in real life workflows. And when we talk about this to students, to professionals in conferences, trade shows, and all of these places, we talk about the real world application of these plugins. And they don't just see these plugins and these tools as simply as a demo, but they see it in a real world, real session application as well. So this is a context for Rob's talk and what happens once you associate it with Avid. So I'll hand it back to Rob. Thank you.
Thanks, Shri. And yeah, like you said, we have people going in front of customers in big and small events all over the world and showing off not just like putting Pro Tools on the screen, but putting Pro Tools and a bunch of plugins and like showing the entire workflow. So if you're interested in that, talk to Shri at one of the breaks. Okay, so the other thing before I really get into the main thrust of the talk here is to point out that Avid is hiring, and specifically Avid is hiring right here in Bengaluru. So we are going to hear at the end of the presentation from GlobalLogic, and if you are interested in that, which I hope you are, please come to talk to us at the booth, okay? All right, so if you do fall asleep halfway through this because of my droning voice, I want you to know that building audio plugins and integrated apps with Avid products is free. I feel like I shouldn't have to express this because that information is not like hidden anywhere, but we've had a lot of questions over time where people come to us and say, well, I thought I had to like pay a bunch of money to Avid to like build one of these things. I don't know where it comes from, but I just want you to know that is the case. There are some extra steps, like I said, for both developing, for getting in, and then for testing and signing your products and just making sure that they work securely with Avid's products. I'll talk about that later. And then if you have questions, There are actually a number of contact points with Avid and different URLs and things. And it's great if you remember all of those. If you don't remember all of those, then you can talk to me and my team at avid.developer.services@avid.com, and we can dispatch your question to the right subgroup within Avid. So if you have, if your Rolodex is 1 page long, put that on the page. Okay, now there's an asterisk, which maybe is where this confusion comes from. When I say free, what I mean is you're not paying Avid money to be a partner with Avid. You do still have to make a product and sign and notarize and staple your installers and stuff with Apple tool. You have to pay Apple something for that. And when you make an ADCx plugin, you'll have to sign that plugin, and there's some stuff you have to buy in order to do that. So there is a little bit of investment, but it's not very much, and it's not like there's some sort of a agreement where Avid's taking your money in order for you to be a partner. Okay, a great starting point. Like I said, you're not going to usually go and git clone any of these. So the place where you do go, the main portal, is developer.avid.com or developer.avid.com/audio for all of you. You will have to make an Avid account there, and then you'll get a menu of SDKs. You can go pick the SDK. There'll be a license agreement, which you should read. I say here, just click through it. Don't just click through it. Read what you're agreeing to. But it's essentially you're not going to make something that's really, really, really out of line for what this SDK is designed for. And then you can download it. You can download documentation, tools, and everything. Okay, so what can you actually build with any of this? First, I'm going to talk about Yukon. So this is our control surface and command connectivity API. In particular, it allows Avid control surfaces and control apps to interact with your applications. So if you have an audio application that runs on Mac or Windows, then you can Yukonize it. You can add the implementation or an adapter for the control layer of your application, and Avid control surfaces and tablet apps and things can connect with it. Because it's designed for audio applications, it has special features related to audio applications. So does it see? Yeah, hey, look at that. So here's a large format surface, an S6, I think, in the background here. And look, it's got an EQ curve that comes over Yukon from the application that's being controlled. And it's got these scrolling waveforms, which are really cool. And those aren't normal generic control protocol things, but they're in Yukon. So yeah, it's essentially, and not just a control protocol, but an audio application control protocol. All right, so how do you get started? Same thing, we're gonna repeat this multiple times in the presentation. Go to developer.avid.com and download the SDK. Then, once you get the SDK, it's a heavily C++ object style interface. There are a bunch of classes inside of that. So what you will end up doing once you read the documentation and understand all of it is you're going to implement your control layer for your application in terms of a hierarchy of C++ objects. I guess, I don't have a really good analogy, but maybe a voice over control or command tree would be something similar. Those objects for Yukon range from the top level, which is your whole application, and then you get down into things like arrays of knob cells like you would get on the control surface back here. This column here with the meters and all that stuff. Those are described in terms of Yukon objects. So it's also not a very generic protocol where you're just saying, I have all of these float values and tell the control surface to do something with them. You have a lot of control over how things get mapped out, but not full control because we have different formats of control surfaces and apps. And so Yukon, the smarts of Yukon is reformatting what you present into a shape that works well on all the control surfaces. You don't have to deal with those specific details. Yukon takes care of it for you. All right, and then how do you actually test this and develop? Use the Avid Control app, which you get on your tablet, and you just test with it, and it's free, and so you can start today, do it right now. I don't mind if you're on your laptop. We also, if you download the SDK, have some emulators for the large format consoles, because we assume that you don't have one of those at your house. If you do, that's great. Otherwise, you can run an emulation of it and just see what happens. So what does that actually look like in practice? Thank you, Avid Marketing. Here's a video. And the, that's fine. Basically, this is running Pro Tools, and obviously Pro Tools has a deep integration with Yukon, but any application can do this. This is showing the Avid Control tablet app, which is what the user's interacting with. And then it's docked into a control surface we make called the S1, which sort of enhances the app experience and then gives you some physical controls. So essentially, like, if laying out your application in a way that a user would sensibly interact with it in these sorts of ways, like, makes sense, then Yukon's a good thing to consider. But even if it doesn't, Yukon also supports a type of control which gets mapped to like a soft key, like a macro key on the control surface, and the user is able to lock different applications to different parts of the control surface. So even if your application provides one function, but it's a really useful function for somebody, and they're always trying to go back and forth and be in Pro Tools, and then they're like, go over to your application and push the button, and then go back again, you can put that button in Yukon, and then the user can just like put that on their control surface and always have it there and not have to go back and forth. So that's also an application, another reason why an audio application in general, why you should consider it. Okay, let's move on to Pro Tools scripting library. So like I said, I've got 3 different areas here, and I'm just kind of going to give you a little bit of information about each one. And honestly, like, if you want to dig deep into each one, the right thing to do is to go grab the documentation for it, because I can't really get into much here. But you can always talk to me afterwards. Also, I have like tons of bonus slides that I came up with and then had to rip out. So I'm happy to show you any more details about these. Okay, say it with me now. Download the SDK from developer.avid.com. That's where you start for all of these. And for Pro Tools scripting library, in this case, this API is based entirely around Google protocol buffers and gRPC. So there's a single protocol buffer definition file, ptsl.proto, and it defines all the messages, all the commands, all of the events you can monitor. It defines everything. And the actual RPC, I think there's like 2 functions, and we only mostly use one of the 2 of them. The actual RPC part is pretty lightweight. It's just a way to send the name of like the session ID so it knows who it's talking to, the command you're trying to run, and then a bunch of JSON that packs up all the arguments of that command. And then it's a streaming response. Well, I'll talk about that in a second. Then make a client, so make something that's going to be able to interact with this RPC system. In the case of Yukon, that was getting, that kind of transport layer was getting delivered in some libraries that come with the SDK. In the case of Pro Tools scripting, it's just this protocol file. But there's a good reason for that, which is that there are many different languages. If you know protocol buffers, like you don't have to do C++. You can do, I actually, again, bonus slides. I have a completely working Rust example if you are interested in seeing that. So we come with a C++ client that does a little bit of bookkeeping for you. You don't have to use it. And it's pretty easy to look at the source code for that and see like, oh, those are the 3 things that it's keeping track of, and re-implement that in whatever language you want. Okay, and then again, you can start working on this. Again, if you want to open up your laptop and grab Pro Tools Intro, there are multiple versions of Pro Tools. Intro is the most feature-reduced one and the most cost-reduced one because it's free. So you can just start building a scripting app for Pro Tools, use Pro Tools Intro. You don't have to worry about figuring out how you're going to get like deeper involvement in Pro Tools. If you do, however, if you want a feature, if you want to interact with like an ambisonic, like a third-order ambisonics track, make something that works with that. You're not going to get that in Pro Tools Intro, so you can talk to us about having access to the features you need. Okay, so go into a little bit more detail here. I pretty much covered this already. There's a server that runs inside of Pro Tools. The protobuf layer, you're going to have a protobuf layer, which is going to connect to that server, and you can use the C++ example in the SDK as a good starting point for that. We're just developing C++. And then your code is just going to interact with that, sending commands. All right, so here's a here's a sequence diagram that I'm not going to walk through entirely, but actually the main reason I wanted to show this was to point out that each of these commands you send is actually an asynchronous command, and it's not just like a command response. It's a streaming request. And what that allows us to do is with basically a single RPC API, we can handle a lot of different circumstances. So you can treat this like a synchronous request. In the C++ client, it returns a future, which has the response JSON packed into it. So you can treat it as a synchronous request by just like send the command and then get the future and wait for it to get done, and then you've got the response back. But you can also do things like have progress bars, because you can send the request and then have an optional callback, which happens as progress is happening. your callback is getting great. And then like when you feel like you're done, you just call get on the future, pull the result out of it, and you'll block. Like, where is that? Where is my thing? You block your thread waiting for the future to complete. There it does. There's another thing which, if you looked at this early on, there was a feature we added in the middle of last year, which is subscribing to events. So you can find out what's going on in Pro Tools by sending this long-running streaming request, which basically never finishes, but it triggers that optional callback every time one of the events you're subscribed to happens. So we can, again, handle lots of different use cases with a pretty narrow API, which to me, as an API developer, I think it's cool. Okay, so here's an example. And this is a technology preview. This is something we're working on with Fraunhofer right now. And so no promises because it's not shipping yet. But what's happening in this case is we have an ADCx plugin, which is going to open an MPEG-H master file, which is a WAV file with a bunch of metadata inside. And it's an immersive format. So it's got lots of different channels representing tracks. It's got things representing objects, and it's got spatial positioning metadata for all those objects, all in that one WAV file. The plugin, in this case, wants to be able to, the reason it's a plugin is we want to be able to like render audio through it to the actual like Pro Tools monitor output. So someone doesn't have to go to a separate app and set up its monitoring solution. But what's happening here is the plugin is just going along and making the tracks. And then it's bringing in the audio files, and it's making the audio files, and it's putting the audio files on the tracks. And then it's putting the automation data for all the positional metadata onto the tracks. And then it's able to play back, and the user is able to hear what's going on through their Pro Tools monitoring environment. So anyway, look at that. Isn't that cool? I love it. So that's the kind of thing that you can do, even if you're making plugins, for example, and you think, how can I use this Pro Tools script? Often we try to divide the world of the responsibilities of a plugin. And we often get questions like, well, I'm making this plugin, but what I really want to be able to do is like start the transport rolling from inside of my plugin. We think that's not really a responsibility of like an insert on the track. You have to like put the insert there in order to push a button to get your transport to start rolling. It's not the right workflow. But Pro Tools scripting, like you can put any workflow you want in there. So yeah, if you have ideas like that, things that are beyond the pale of just the plugin API, check Pro Tools scripting out, check the commands that are available, and we keep expanding it with each release of Pro Tools also. So if you looked before and a command wasn't available, or if you wanted that event monitoring system, look again, it might be there. All right. Well, we're breezing through this. Great. AX is my area because I'm a developer on the Pro Tools team. If you don't know, it's Avid's plugin format. And why does Avid have a plugin format? Well, for one reason, we have a few unique requirements in order to get a consistent experience across multiple audio products. So this is used by Pro Tools. It's used by our Venue live sound platforms. And it's also used by Media Composer, our nonlinear video editor. So if you make an AX plugin, to some extent, it can work with all three of those. In particular, like I said, we have some unique requirements. The Avid ecosystem includes products like our HDX PCIe cards, which have a big bucket of DSPs on them. And when you run a plugin, an AAX plugin on an HDX system, you can run it fully native, but you can also break it up and run part of it on those DSPs, which is great. It allows you to do very, very low. Actually, we have a Carbon sitting out there in the desk area. And it has the same type of topology on it. And I think that the audio throughput of the Carbon, because it's going directly from the converter straight over to the DSPs and straight back to the converter, it's like this ridiculously low latency, basically real time. And that's what we're able to achieve by taking the AX plugins and breaking them apart and putting them, executing something remotely, like on a DSP, very, very close to the converters. And we have a few other DAW-specific features, like we saw with Yukon, there were those EQ curves. You can make an EQ curve for your AAX plugin and put it on the Yukon surface, for example. All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. Well, I want to talk about what we were thinking about when we built AAX, partly to explain, like if you're a Juice developer, you might build a cross-format plugin, you might include AAX with that. And by the way, AAX is now included with Juice. So before you had to like go and get it somewhere else and plug it in. Now it's just you download Juice and there's a copy of AAX there. So so know that because that was a fairly recent thing. But you might be used to debugging in your code, like on your side of the Juice adapter. But every now and then you'll have an issue and you'll have to go into the format-specific code. And I would like you to understand what is going on when you look at the AAX part of that if you're doing something with Pro Tools. So let's think about what a plugin is. Here's a plugin. It's easy. There's like 3 points of connectivity. This could be a plugin. This could be like a node in a processing chain. This is something that processes audio in sort of an object-based universe. Essentially, what you need to be able to do is change its state, find out what its state is, because you probably want to display it somewhere, and process audio. Or process, it could actually, I should say, yeah, this is samples. It could be MIDI, it could be other stuff. It's real time, right? Something that interacts with the real world here on the bottom in a very like real-time, deadline-driven way. Okay, so let's look inside. Oh, look, it's easy. There are 2 blobs. You've got some state and some business logic that's connected with those connectivity points that are going to be like changing this. I know this is like, there's a reason why this is super abstract, and it's because I wanted it to be like as broadly applicable as possible. So I start adding special cases here. It's like, it looks like it's not applicable. This, basically everything needs to do this, right? At the bottom, you've got some kind of an algorithm that gets triggered. And, right, like, you want to connect that. Like, you don't want your algorithm to live in an island. You want it to react to changes in state. So you connect the 2 of them. Why is that line red? Why can't you just do that? I was trying to find an example from Clap, and I was like, if anyone's an expert in Clap, please come talk to me later, because I would like to understand. Juice is a much better example of this. Here's a filter class from Juice. And like, it's up to the caller to ensure these coefficients are modified in thread safe way on every single object, right? Like every blob that you encapsulate as an object has 2 things it's doing. And what's an object? What's a class? A class is some program code, right? It's the same program. Like every instance of the class it's every object, same program code, and it's connected to some data. So the responsibility of the class is to have some program code that operates on this pointer that's like pointed to that data, which is your object. Okay, so so let's add some synchronization, right? That's what we need. And so something I didn't talk about was obviously on the bottom, we're entering into this green blob through a thread. It's a special thread. It's a real-time thread. It has some constraints, and you really, really, really don't want to block that thread. Like really. You don't want to have a mutex on that thread. You pretty much just want to have atomic bools or primitives on the thread. And you don't want to spin. You don't want to do anything on that thread that sounds like something that you don't know how long it takes. So this synchronization is a special kind of synchronization. It is non-blocking, real-time, thread-safe synchronization, which basically requires, well, again, if anyone has a much better solution for this, come talk to me. In my world, it pretty much means you have a copy of the data, right? You have a ping pong buffer, you have something like that. You basically have to have a copy of the data that the algorithm thread is going to interact with. Oh, I drew the arrows going that way, going down. I recognize they go the other way too, like you get meter data going back and forth. So I don't know, imagine you have 2 synchronization mechanisms here, but both of them are designed such that the real-time thread doesn't get held off. Okay, let's review. What's an object, right? What's a class? It's some program code. It's a state. Now we have, like, what do we have? We've got 2 of those. We've got 2 program codes in two states. So we don't draw the boundary around the whole thing. Like in practice, like you can draw the boundaries around the whole thing, but in practice, in your code, the logic of your code, I bet, has two distinct classes, even if it's just one class. It has like two distinct control flow islands inside of one class. Okay, so remember I said that ADCx supports remoting essentially that bottom part of the plugin design. So I drew these boundaries with the synchronization part outside, because if we want to send data between systems, like to our DSP chips, we do need a pretty consistent way to achieve the synchronization. When we're sending data from one place to another, we need an API for that, basically. So this is drawn the way that it works in ADCx. You don't have to draw the boundaries that way, but it works for my narrative, so I'm going to do it. Okay, so again, in ADCx, this is where if you're getting into debugging your plugin and you're wondering, why does the ADCx code look like this? This is weird. Why does it need this coefficient block that goes into the algorithm? That's the reason. The host is responsible. These are all pointers. The host, you can't see my cursor. These are all pointers. And so this structure is just a list of pointers, pointer 1, pointer 2, pointer 0, pointer 1, pointer 2. The host is responsible for filling the data behind all those pointers every time it calls the algorithm. We've got some audio inputs and outputs. The host is going to fill those. It's going to call the algorithm audio inputs. This is the part that is essentially the thing we were talking about before on that juice filter. Here's data that the algorithm for the filter, and this is copied from Avid's EQ plugin that comes with Pro Tools. So here are all the coefficients for that. And then usually you're going to need some kind of like data, some memory allocation. For ADCx, all of the data that the algorithm uses is managed by the host. So these are blobs where the plugin had said, I'm going to need a K of memory, please. And the host will allocate that and then give you a pointer to it. So kind of like, this is the result of your malloc. And then, like I said, things go the other direction. So here's a buffer for meters. So that's basically, like, if you look at any ADCx algorithm, that's what you're going to see. The prototype is the same for all of these callbacks. It's just void, void star, void star. The first void star is a pointer to your coefficient block. Like the type of that is this list of pointers that you've told the host about. And then the second one is just the end of, it's an array of them. So the second one is the end of that array. All right, so there's more stuff. This is the ADCx documentation page. And particularly, I wanted to show that if you, let me orient you here. So if you open up the ADCx documentation, you'll get to this page. And if you go to the manual within this page, there are a lot of different pages and topics and things if you're interested in particular areas or if you're debugging an issue, particularly with your plugin. And I highly recommend, because I wasn't able to get into it in detail in this talk today, but I wanted to, I highly recommend looking at the parameter update sequence area. All this, because the other half of this story, like I've only told you half the story, which is breaking up the algorithm part. The other half is what happens when the user touches something in the GUI. How does that actually get everywhere it needs to go? How does it get synchronized? How does it get delivered at the right moment? Let's say we're playing back automation, so you're like pre-rolling it. And again, remember that red line. If you pre-roll automation at the top half, you don't want the bottom half to like immediately change the state because it's at the wrong time. So how does that all work? It's described there. So if you're interested in it, take a look. Okay. I think we've got extra time. So like I said at the beginning, you are going to acquire these tools with a few extra steps. And especially if you're getting to the point of building a product and deploying it and putting it in front of customers. For ADCx, there are just a couple of extra steps. So I want to talk about those. But first, we do the thing that we talked about for Yukon or for Pro Tools scripting. We'll sign up for the ADCx SDK, developer.avid.com, and then download the SDK, look at the documentation, Oh, there are some tools also available. So you'll have access to a command line runner for AX plugins, what's called a page table editor to make a resource file that goes with your plugin and allows it to map successfully to Yukon surfaces. There are a few other things that you get at this stage. And some of the things that are there are builds of Pro Tools. But you can't use builds of Pro Tools yet because you don't have licenses, so you're gonna have to talk to us to get licenses. In particular, you'll want a build of Pro Tools that lets you debug your plugin. Those are called developer builds. And in order to get access to those, you'll have to send an email to us, in this case, or the right email to remember is called devauth, for developer authorizations, at avid.com. And then within a few days, they'll review your request and hopefully send you some licenses. But we do want the human touch point here because, we want to know who you are and what you're working on before we're just handing out licenses. So they'll get licenses back to you. And again, if you forget that email address, talk to my team, Avid Developer Services at avid.com. Okay, great. So now you've got some licenses and you can build and test your plugin. You can debug it. You can even check it with like beta builds and make sure they're compatible. Cool. Next, well, actually, I said you could test it with beta builds. When you try to test it with beta builds or with shipping builds of Pro Tools, you will find that you hit a wall because it's not going to be signed correctly to run in those builds. So AX plugins have a particular signing requirement. We license some tools from Pace that allow us to have a fairly tightly controlled certificate authority for these signatures and signing process. So you will again have to talk to us. This is another email address for you to remember, audio SDK at avid.com. That is not just for requesting the signing tools, it's basically the partnering team at Avid. So if you're interested in any particular kind of business partnership, or even like getting into demos, things like that, this is a great email just to remember to connect with the people at Avid who do that specifically. But they also handle these requests for the signing tools. Again, we want a human on the other side of that who can look at your product or hear your description of it, or just like make sure you're a real legitimate company. Okay, so we're going to take your request. We're going to send a message over to Pace and say, hey, Pace, please provide the tools to this person. And then they'll do it. Great. Remember at the very beginning, I said that this is all free. Here's one of those asterisks. The tools that we license reside on, I don't have one here, but it requires a physical iLock USB device. So that's like a thing you would have to buy if you want to go through this flow. There are also cloud-based signing tools that Pace provides, but you have to get those directly from Pace. It does the same thing in the end, but like if your CI/CD flow and your production and deployment flow is entirely cloud-based, or like you rent space on a VM or something like that, you're going to run into the fact that you can't plug a physical key into those. So just be aware. You'll hit a issue at that point in the process and talk to Pace, and you'll sort it out with them because they do have a solution for it. Okay, so that covers everything that I wanted to talk about. Again, at a high level, skipping through these 3 APIs, and I'm happy to talk in greater detail about any of them with you. I'm sure I'll have some questions. But I also want to give space because I think possibly the most important part of any of this is that if you want to come work on the team at Pro Tools doing this sort of thing, I would love to talk to you. So we're going to have Praveen come up from GlobalLogic and tell you more about how you can do that.
Good afternoon. I know we are getting closer to lunch, so I'll try not to hold you guys for a long time. But yeah, hearing what Rob just explained to what I'm going to talk about now is the journey of how we built the Avid lab at Bangalore at GlobalLogic, right? So first, before I go there, I'm a director of engineering at GlobalLogic. More than 2 decades of IT industry experience into product engineering, program delivery, building teams, all of that. And I've been with GlobalLogic for the last 4 years, particularly working for the media and entertainment delivery unit, and working with a lot of customers in the media and entertainment space. Avid is one of those major engagements I'm driving. First of all, what is GlobalLogic? Who is GlobalLogic? GlobalLogic is part of the Hitachi group. Hitachi needs no introduction. Big conglomerate with more than 150 organizations or companies worldwide, from Hitachi Nuclear, Hitachi Energy, and whatnot, Hitachi Rail, whatnot. The security and access token systems we use in the metro in Bangalore are from Hitachi, right? So needs no introduction. So 4 years back, we went into the Hitachi family, and we are the digital product engineering service providers to a majority of the organizations in the world. So this is who we are. More than 32,000 employees all over the world, with half of them in India, working with a lot of customers, private label customers, public limited companies, all of them. Avid is one of these 119 private label customers we work with, and we have built an engineering lab for Avid. I'll talk about more of that towards the last, but this is who we are. We have an office in Bangalore, and we have 5 or 6 centers all over India working for all these customers. Coming to the work we do at the Media and Entertainment Delivery Unit, or a Center of Excellence in India, we have more than 3,000 engineers who come from a traditional IT development and QA and DevOps and all of those kind of streams, but particularly expertise and specialized on the media and entertainment space. If you imagine, because all of you are from the community, I'm sure you all understand, media and entertainment has 3 separate aspects. One is content creation and post-production. Then the second one is content processing. And the third one is content distribution. At GlobalLogic, we work with all the 3 areas with a variety of customers and do a lot of engineering work for all these customers. Coming to post-production and pre-production, that is where we work extensively with Avid on products like Pro Tools, Carbon, Media Composer, many of them, right? We have been working with Avid since ages on all of these products, and GlobalLogic has significantly contributed to these products. We work with some of the organizations which help curate the content, add captions, do multiple format conversions, language conversions. That's mostly in the pre-production and post-production space. We also work with a lot of customers, mostly on the hyperscalers, on the cloud service providers, where a lot of these platforms are based. We help deploy, we help maintain, we help engineer those platforms for scale on the cloud, right? Recently, one of the major OTT providers did a rejig of their application, and our teams helped test that product on 14 different platforms, simulating a peak workload for 20 million subscribers when they were just going live. So this is just an example of the kind of work we do. And we also work with a majority of service providers, the network service providers, and we work on the engineering and integration of all these products on those networks. And finally, coming to the distribution, we work with the TV manufacturers, build their TV operating systems from the firmware till the application and cloud deployment side. And we also work with a lot of OTT streaming and traditional broadcasting providers, building the applications and engineering all of them on their workflows. So at GlobalLogic, we have a lot of expertise working on all these areas, doing engineering across firmware, middleware, and the application side. And definitely, we are always on the lookout for talent who can come in with that right media industry background and come with the necessary technical skill set to join our team and help work with customers like Avid and build their products of the future. So that is what is GlobalLogic? Coming to Avid in particular, Avid is one of those 119 private label labs I had just mentioned in one of the other side. We have our teams working for Avid across the globe, be in South America, be in Central Eastern Europe or Europe, and now in Asia Pacific. For the last 2 years, we have been building the engineering team for Avid in particular. We have now people working in India on all these 4 areas of the product lines Avid has, be it professional audio solutions like Pro Tools, working on audio interfaces, working on control surfaces. We have people working on the Sibelius and Avid Place, the distribution and integration side of it. We have video editing and post-production team working on the likes of Media Composer SDKs, the Nexus storage devices, the edit on demand and the Wolf Text and all of those aspects. We are also working on the broadcasting side of it, the live sports and news broadcasting with the likes of Media Central and the new product which Avid is planning and where the lot of energies of Avid and GlobalLogic are deployed today, which is Content Core, which actually got previewed on IBC last year and even on NAB that is going to be demonstrated. So looking back at the last 2 years, right? Some of the challenges we really faced were finding talent which has that creative bent. I think Milap was also talking about it. There are 2 kind of people we have, right, in the industry. One is people with a creative bent, come from that really music background, passionate about music, and then the IT engineers who come with that traditional C++, Java and whatnot, all that skill set. How to find the particular challenge we faced when we were building the Avid team was how to find that engineering talent which is passionate about music. And then bring that talent and then start working on Avid. So like when we found or when we were looking for the QA team, when we were looking for setting up the Pro Tools QA team, we really had to look for sound engineering professionals who had done sound engineering, who had done recording, who have done a post-production, and then bring them into a traditional IT space and form that QA team so that they have the context of the industry, how industry uses the products, how they have been using it to earn their livelihood, and then marry that with an IT release or software delivery lifecycle. So we went through those journeys. One thing we really noticed was there is a lot of passion and energy, and a lot of people from the industry wanted to join our team. But the real challenge was finding the right talent who could come in and fit into the IT space and get integrated with our engineering teams. So we have managed to overcome that, and now we are, I think, ready to launch, and a lot of expansion is going to happen. We are always on the lookout for right talent. So definitely we have a booth. We have our engineers who have been through that journey for the last 2 years. They are on the booth. Please feel free to interact with them, and we will be happy to hear you out.
Thank you. And I've got one more thing because we have time and it's fun. It's apropos of nothing. It's like not anything that I talked about there, but I was planning this talk. We had a hackathon at the Pro Tools team, which is like the best. We take a week and people set aside their normal work and work on whatever they want. All right, so we had one developer. I was going to show you mine because it's actually relevant to project, but somebody else did something cooler, so I'll show you that instead. One developer was working on performance in the Pro Tools timeline. So the Pro Tools timeline has a lot of stuff going on. It's got lots of tracks, and he was looking at performance of rendering clips, but rendering graphically, not sound. And how do we make sure that that can go really fast? Because the whole timeline could be like scrolling along. You have a big post-production session. It's got lots and lots and lots of these on the screen. So his hackathon project was around that. And in order to test that, he had to make a lot of tracks and he had to make a lot of clips, right? And if you're a programmer and you're developing something that has a lot of little points that you want to draw, then obviously what you do is treat them as pixels and, do what all developers do. So I just thought this was hilarious. Here we go. These are clips in Pro Tools playing Doom. Anyway, he's going to get through the level quite quickly here. Does anyone have any questions? How did that sound? It sounded like Doom because he actually he made this whole rendering engine and then also had the ability to connect to a core audio device from anyway. It was what he worked on for a week, so it sounded great. We were like talking on Teams one evening. It was like 2 a.m. for him. We're like, oh, Carlos, you shouldn't be working this late. He said, no, I'm playing Doom. That's all in Pro Tools. That's all I'm doing. Yeah.
All right, round of applause for Rob, Praveen, and Srijesh.